Hi, good morning po sa lahat. Today, we will be discussing the anatomy and the proper way to dissect a chicken. A brief background to the chickens first. Birds, as described by the English zoologist Thomas Huxley, are glorified reptiles. Although birds are grouped as a separate vertebrate class called Aves, aside from the flight capabilities and features which are associated with it, they are structurally similar to that of the reptiles. These include a lower jaw made up of several bones fused together, whereas mammals only have one bone. A single bone in the middle ear. Again, mammals have 3 bones. A single occipital condyle joining the skull to the first neck vertebra. Sa mammals, we have 2. A sclerotic eye ring, or the bony part surrounding their eyeballs, which helps in their landing, hunting, or even evading predators. The similar scales of the chicken legs with that of the reptile scales, and etc. Over anything else, the demand of flight have contoured the form and the function of these birds. Virtually every adaptation that can be found in birds are rooted on 2 features: more power and less weight. In this exercise, we will learn the in-depth anatomy and the functions of each organ of our specimen, starting from the external anatomy to the skeletal system, up to the digestive, respiratory, circulatory, and urogenital systems. Ano? Ready na ba kayo? Tara, samahan nyo na kami.
Alright, so we have to distinguish between the male and the female. Male and female, yes. Okay? So if we look at the parts, we start with the comb. Okay? The comb, and then we have the wattle. This is the beak or bill. And then that should be the external nares or the nostrils. Now, on the side here, okay, on the side, you have a top of feathers, okay? But if we trace inside, if we look inside, we can see that there is an opening that we call the external auditory meatus, okay? So that's part of the external ear. Okay, and then you have a slightly long neck, and then you have the wings here, and then you have, okay, take note that this is the thigh, the shank, and the foot. Okay, proof of this is that the bone of the shank is the tibiotarsus, and the bone here with the 3 knuckles is the metatarsus, okay, tarsals and metatarsal bones, and then you have the phalanges. Okay, in the male there is a spar, okay, an spur, spar, okay, and this is a relatively young male, so the spar is not well developed. It is used as an organ for offense and defense. Okay, so we can distinguish the female, one by the narrow comb. Okay, see, the comb here is wider than this one, and then the wattle, okay, is, you see the wattle, it's almost non-existent in the female, in this female. Okay, and there is no spar in the foot. Okay, the spar.
Alright, so next naman is the skeletal system of the chicken. Medyo familiar na tayo sa ibang parts ng bones ng chicken due to almost weekly natin tong inuulam. Mapa-adobo, afritada, sinampalukan, At ang favorite nating lahat, ang fried chicken. Familiar with their looks, but not with their names. Kaya, let's go on with it. Okay, first let's talk about the skeletal parts of the head and neck of our specimen. We have the following: nasal, lacrimal, occipital, atlas, incisive, mandible, quadrate, and epistropheus. Nasal is the one that supports the nose, the nostrils of the bird. Lacrimal helps with the process of tear production. The occipital performs as a protection and muscle attachment to the skull. Atlas is responsible for the head rotation and nodding. Incisive and mandible are the ones responsible for food intake with the help of the hard beak and their strong tongue. Quadrate helps the lower jaw articulation. Epistropheus, also known as axis, is a short projection from the cranial end that passes through their atlas, which helps also in allowing the head to turn onto the neck. Next are the skeleton parts of the chicken torso or the body. We have the clavicle, the coracoid, and the scapula, which consists the shoulder girdle. The coracoid being the strongest bone of the shoulder girdle, which has two ends. One end fits in the sternum, and the other end connects with the clavicle. The clavicle or the collarbone is connected to the coracoid, as stated earlier, and the other end connects with the other clavicle. Thus, ito yung tinatawag natin na wishbone. The wishbone is also known as furcula, that acts like a spring and provides support for the wings. The scapula, it is a narrow, thin, and slightly curved bone in which at the cranial end receives the head of the humerus. We also have the ilium, the ischium, pubis, and the pygostyle. Ilium is fused with the rest of the vertebra to provide strength and rigidity, and is also fused with ischium and the pubis. Pubis is the free posterior end of the ischium that projects slightly backward. The pygostyle, or as we call it isol, or puwet ng manok, is a fused final few caudal vertebra that supports the tail feathers and the muscles. Next are the bones of the wings, starting with the humerus. It is a large, long bone with an ovoid head for articulation with the scapula, coracoid, and the clavicle. It is a pneumatic bone with a connection to the clavicular air sac. The two bones of the forearm are the ulna, which is the thicker and the longer one, and the radius, that lies laterally to the ulna. The large space between the ulna and the radius is called the interosseous space. The manus, or the hand, consists of the carpus, the metacarpus, and the digits. The carpus of an adult contains only two bones, the ulnar and the radial, that represent the proximal row of mammalian carpal bones. In the embryo, cartilaginous nodules represent the distal row, but these fuse with the metacarpus and disappear. In the adult, the metacarpus is in the form of a single bone that is produced by the union of the three elements that correspond to the first, second, and third metacarpal bones of the limb. Modification and fusion has reduced the number of recognizable digits to 3, which are carried by the metacarpals. Lastly are the bones of the legs and the feet. The femur is a typical long bone and is quite thick and bent. The proximal end has a prominent head that fits loosely into the acetabulum. The distal end carries the deep pulley-shaped surface for the patella or the kneecap, and two convex condyles that articulate with the bones of the lower leg. The tibia is a much longer bone than the fibula and is much thicker at the proximal end than that is at the distal end. The proximal row of the tarsal bones is fused to the distal end of the tibia. The fibula is greatly reduced compared to other animals and consists of a slender spicule or needle-like and has a flattened head for attachment to the proximal head of the tibia. The adult metatarsus is a long bone actually formed by the union of the second, third, and fourth metatarsal bones. In male chickens, a small conical projection on the medial side supports the spur. Most fowl breeds have 4 digits, 3 facing forwards and 1 facing back. Okay, so we finished the skeletal system of the chicken. We now proceed to the process of dissection and the determination of the internal organs.